Hi, I'm Cheryl Duffy, the founder of the Divorce Centre, divorce coach and mediator. And today I'm talking with Ali Wilks, step family coach, about resentment. So hi, Ali, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I am a step family coach. I actually call myself a successful step family strategist. Makes it a little more succinct. That's a kind of a newer development. I also work with couples, so I'm a couples coach as well. And just a little bit of a background around about me. I have my master's degree in master's of science degree in step family or in family studies, and I'm a stepmom myself, and part of the reason why I went into this field of work is because of my own struggles in my step family life. Work-wise, professionally, I did social work and worked with step families, or sorry, I always get step families and foster families. They kind of are a lot of similarities. So I worked with foster families and adoptive families, and so that work informed my step family work. And so as a result of my own personal struggles, I created some retreats, the Successful Stepmom Retreat and the Successful Step Couple Retreat. So I do a lot of work individually with step moms, and quite often they're like, oh, can I bring my partner into these conversations? Can we? And so I end up doing a lot of couples work as a result of that. And so I've created a program specific to step family resentment, and that's the 10-week Peaceful Stepmom Roadmap. And so, yeah, when we touched base and connected, we really found that kind of resentment thing was a common theme for the work that you do and the work that I do. And so that's where I focus my work. But in that work, I'm pretty holistic in that, and so I like to use 4 dimensions of help in working through stepmom and step family challenges. So I take a holistic approach, and with that, it's meditation and in addition to the coaching. So it's a kind of eclectic but well-rounded approach to working with stepmoms.
Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about resentment, both from my clients that come to the Divorce Centre and the step family that you work with as well.
Yes. So I wanted to just ask you and get some clarity around what it is that, what are the main reasons why your clients at the Divorce Centre will feel resentment?
Well, I get a lot of clients who are feeling like they're just totally blindsided and in shock with the separation, the divorce, and that can be caused by infidelity, or they can just feel that their whole world is turned upside down because basically their financial instability is impacted. They're losing access to their children because obviously we get used to having our kids every day, and then you're moving into this phase of where you're going to have to share the parenting. So a lot of resentment can build up for that. And also it's a case of, the loss of family and friends. People are going to take sides, or you're not going to have as much contact with your ex's family going forward. So there's a lot that people feel that they've lost, and they feel very resentful about.
So, yes, absolutely.
So with the step family side, what are the topics that cause resentment in step family life?
Well, and it's interesting, some of the key places that you identified are really the resentment topics that are the most difficult for step family life. And so just a little bit of clarification, you are working with folks who are going through the divorce process. And obviously the work that I do is kind of the next step in working with couples who have children from their previous relationship And then they're moving into what, you know, lots of people understand it as the blended family, as another name for step families. And so the fact that you brought up the finances, that's definitely a key piece, particularly if you have children from a previous relationship. Then there's going to be things like child support. And sometimes the ex-spouses also get financial support. So that's, I'm not sure what the terminology is over in Australia, but it's spousal support. So sometimes that can cause an issue, because as this new couple is trying to blend their families together, finances can be a really big issue. And you also mentioned the discipline of the children. So those are two of the bigger areas that can cause tension for step families. And underneath that is that communication and communication challenges, which impede those discussions around finances and discipline and roles and rules and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely a carryover into newer relationships when you're repartnering.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you have lots of children that can be saying, "You're not my mom," or "You're not my dad. You can't tell me what to do." So it's a very sort of, you know, fine line to walk, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And did you, I know we talked a little bit about your previous experiences. Did you feel resentment when you went through your own divorce?
Oh, absolutely. You know, once the shock subsides and you start to really think about what's happened and how your life is going to change, it sort of, I don't know, I think the resentment built for me because I felt my life had been so ruined, and that loss of self-worth, because you just feel that rejection and abandonment, and you just feel such anger towards your ex in putting you and the kids through this big tumultuous sort of change in life, that you just feel everything's going to just not be the same. And you just hold on to that blame for such a long time, and it really, really impacts you in a negative way. And like, I just plummeted into depression, and I was self-sabotaging with comfort eating, you know, eating my emotions. Like, chocolate became my best friend. So it was like I was stuck in my old life, because I stayed in the family home, stayed at the same company where my ex worked. So it was like I was just stuck in my old life, just with my ex not in it. So I'm a real big advocate for having a fresh start, so that you can sort of release those shackles of your old life, so to speak, and just move into a new chapter for your life ahead, so you can create the life that you want.
For sure. And I had my own experiences of resentment, and that's why I created that program, specifically that 10-week program, because man, it is a common theme in the work that I've been doing, right? It just keeps talking about resentment. And so absolutely, you know, if you experience that resentment yourself, then you're getting through to the other side like you did and I did, then, you know, understanding how we can support other people to get through to that other side is a huge thing to do, for sure.
And to get through it a lot quicker. So the key, because when you have resentment and you spiral into that depression, it can take months and years to be able to, you know, be able to get through to the other side.
Yeah, and to be able to know that there's actually signposts along the way to help you through it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's key, is to know there is something on the other side, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely powerful.
Yeah. So you were mentioning before about communication. So how does communication breakdown lead to resentment in step families?
Yeah, and so one of the things that I have done is I've actually had a specialized a webinar for step couples, And I talk about three tips to create greater connection with your partner, even though you have conflict. So a few of the things that I talk about is, not having proper role models or examples when you're growing up. And so when you are using, old scripts or even old programming that you get from your family of origin, or even your older relationships, and you bring that into a newer relationship, if you're still carrying, fears around having communication, or not feeling confident about how to broach tough conversations. So, having these old scripts and not being taught how to have conflict, right? Or being able to see conflict as an opportunity. And as a result, people just stop talking, and then resentment kind of just spirals and just builds and becomes layers, because you're anxious about how to have these conversations because you think that they're always going to turn out the same way as they have in the past. And I know how this is going to go. So then you start feeling, you don't feel seen, you don't feel heard, you don't feel understood. And then it's kind of like, well, why can't they see my point of view? And that's a big piece for me, is that I couldn't see where my husband was coming from with our situation. And I was like, why can't he see my point of view? And so it was like me versus him. And I've seen that with my clients, is like, I just can't see their point of view, and he can't see my point of view. And so it becomes, adversarial in a lot of ways, because the communication just, because of the old patterns, you just don't know how to have that conversation with confidence, and feeling like, oh, I have a way, there's actually a way to deal with this. I use in my webinars the map, and give them a way to work around some of these roadblocks that typically come in the way. And when you feel like you've been unsuccessful in the past, then it's like, well, what's the point? And so, like I said, then resentment just kind of builds layer upon layer. Yeah.
Well, I see a similar thing in the co-parenting with the parenting after separation courses that I run, is a lot of conflict just keeps escalating. So therefore, the problems don't get resolved, and they just exacerbate, and it just becomes a very high conflict situation. So there's a lot of resentment, hurtful things are said. So it never ever sort of recovers if they don't sort of look at how they're responding instead of reacting, and making sure that they understand their own conflict styles and be able to soften the blow, and being able to minimize the impact of how they communicate in their conflict, because we are going to have arguments. But I find that if they don't have ground rules set in their co-parenting plan, it can be like a free-for-all basically, and it just creates a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was going to ask my next question, but I'm really loving what you're saying, because it just, like I said, it just really fits and flows into the work that I do with, couples who are repartnering and in the blended family, for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you think resentment can be avoided?
Definitely seek help, professional help, because I didn't. So for 6 years, I made sure the kids were getting the help they needed, and I just threw myself into work. So I was sort of just pushing those emotions down, keeping myself really busy so I didn't have to deal with the grief. But all that did was prolong it, obviously. But, there's a key thing of understanding that there's nothing wrong with you. So particularly if you're the one that's been left, you can create this belief about yourself that you weren't good enough, you're not lovable, all these different things that you feel that, there's no opportunity of being able to ever have a relationship again, because, if your husband of 19 years has left, and they couldn't stick around, well, why would anybody else want to be with you? And you have these weird thoughts about yourself that are so untrue, because you create these beliefs because you're feeling this inadequacy about yourself. And that's due to your self-worth plummeting. When you're feeling that, you've been left, that it's then a reflection about yourself, but it's not. It's a case of looking at all of your key strengths and transforming yourself into your best self. You know, like I say to my clients, like, you know, just because you've had a car accident, you don't stop driving. So what you do is you do the repairs and you get back into the driver's seat and you continue on your journey. So it's about keep moving forward. So instead of sitting in that resentment and dwelling on the past, it's about making sure that you get the help that you need, that emotional support that you need to keep moving you forward to creating a better life, because your life will improve.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you know, you and I have both experienced the resentment, you know, yours post divorce and mine as a result of the step family dynamics. And you can free yourself from that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So with the step families, how can conflict be seen as a good thing?
And that was kind of tying into for you and me about our own personal growth as a result of those difficulties. So when we look at conflict, so this is kind of pulling from a resource that I'm just gonna drop here. His name is John Gottman. And John Gottman is, I think you and I've talked about John Gottman. Yeah. And he is a marriage therapist from the United States, and he's done decades worth of research around communication and what makes not only marriages survive, but what makes them thrive. And you know, one of the things that I learned from the work that from his work and doing research is that, you know, the opportunity to see conflict seeing conflict as an opportunity to clear the air and not looking at it as a negative thing. And that can be a really tough thing to do, because going back to what I was saying before about, you know, our communication patterns that we learned from our parents. Well, how did they learn to fight or not fight? And how did they handle conflict? How did they handle repair? And then if we have that as our frame of reference, then we may be more reluctant to have those conversations. So having conflict and viewing it as an opportunity to connect, rather than you know, fighting each other and being at odds with each other, because clearing the conflict and resolving it leads to a better understanding of each other and has the ability to create compassion and then as a result passion in your relationship, because you can feel like you are a team and that you can work together through these issues instead of avoiding them or fighting and not resolving. You've got a way to deal with it, and you can confidently say, okay, you know what, this is really hard, but we know how to do this now. And every time that we clear things out, we get a better understanding of each other, we get better clarity, and that just builds a stronger connection for us, because then you go, well, there's not a whole lot that we can't handle together. And that's really what it's about, is handling this as a team.
Absolutely. Because when it's adversarial and you're pitting against each other and just shouting and escalating, that's when it's very damaging to the relationship. But that healthy conflict that you're talking about is really helping you be able to resolve issues, so that one person is not having that resentment that, oh, he never helps with the housework, I'm always left to do the housework. So if it's an unspoken and you never talk about the issues of the family as well, then that can cause resentment. But there can also be resentment if you're having these arguments where you can't get to a win-win solution. So you might be saying, you know, oh, you don't help me around the house, and the partner might be saying, yeah, but I'm working 10 hours a day. So it's about working out what can be done, a win-win solution where you can compromise together. So that you feel as though both of you feel empowered that, okay, well, we've got to a situation where we've got an agreement where we can move forward and make this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just curious too, what is the impact of resentment on your healing from separation?
Well, it keeps you stuck in the past. You're unable to move on. So I just find that you're this prisoner, unable to create a new life. It's like you're in a time warp, like in limbo, sort of in the twilight zone, sitting in your old life without your ex being in it. So it's holding on to all those negative thought patterns about how you feel about your ex, how you feel about the breakup, and you just continually be consumed by those negative thoughts. And when you have a negative mindset, you can't even see the opportunities that are around you, because everything is just negative. You just think everything is bad, life is no good. So you're not even looking out for the opportunities to improve your life, but also to be able to heal and be able to move on so that you can, live your best life, being able to look at what your potential is and being able to do something that you could never do before when you were married. There might have been things that you always had a passion to do, but you never got around to it because you had the marital, commitment that you're doing different things together, but you can't sort of go off and do something. You might have wanted to go and volunteer overseas. Well, when you're in a marriage, then you might not be able to do that. But, you find that you become quite free once you've healed and you've let go and you move on, and you just think, oh, the world's my oyster. I can do whatever I want to do now. So then you're able to look at all those bucket list things that you've always wanted to do. Myself, I went and volunteered overseas. I went and did an African safari. I just sort of thought, wow, I can do all these things now. So it almost is like releasing you on a path of your own destiny. It's not now a combined destiny of you're working towards goals together, but now you can do whatever you like. You don't have to get approval from anyone. You don't have to compromise on where you're going to go on holidays. You can actually see this as a bit of freedom of being able to do what you've always wanted to do. So it's really important to enable yourself to heal so that you can look at what you want your life to be like. Because if you stay stuck in resentment, you're sort of not able to live your full potential. So it's just about making sure you become unstuck, so that you can go off on the rest of your journey of life.
Yeah, I love that for sure.
So what's your top tips with dealing with resentment?
Well, and it's a lot of what you've mentioned in some of what you said earlier. And it's definitely for me, it started with doing my kind of self-work or inner work, or however you want to describe that. It's a lot of self-reflection, but also attached to that is some of the things that you were talking about too, is self-care. So those are some of the things that you want to do. Healthy communication patterns and styles is also a way to deal with the resentment, is being able to talk about it. But one of the other things that I wanted to add, in addition to seeking help, so it doesn't necessarily even have to be seeking help from a professional like yourself or myself, but having a community supporting you so that you know that you're not alone. So and you have a support group for your clients. I have a support group for stepmoms as well, and it's a community where only other women who are in that step family relationships or step family life really know what the challenges are like. Much like I've never been divorced, so I don't know necessarily the ins and outs, except for my experience through my brothers and my husband. And so it's really good to have that community of support from people who get you. And then, of course, if you're getting stuck, Cheryl, it's definitely important to seek that professional help to get you unstuck and be able to live, like you said, live your best life and move forward from that. And so it's really interesting that you were talking about that, because one of the quotes that I use often for my work with stepmom resentment is, sometimes they attribute it to Buddha, sometimes they attribute it to Nelson Mandela, but it's that whole, resentment is like swallowing poison and expecting the other person to die.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, if you can release that through your own work, then you're really freeing yourself up in so many ways, and not burdened by somebody else's behavior or circumstances anymore. You're taking that power back into your own hands, for sure.
And that's what it's about. It's taking your power back and being in charge of your own life, because you don't want to keep on allowing your separation or divorce or your step family challenges to be holding you back from doing what you want to do that's going to create that happiness and joy in your life. And, you mentioned about the support groups, which I find that they're absolutely, wonderful for people to be able to connect with others going through that same experience, as you mentioned, because they can sort of feed off each other's help and support, because it's okay being able to talk to friends and family, but if they haven't been through divorce, they're not going to really understand how you're feeling. And you can sort of wear out your support system of your friends and family, because they can be quite drained, thinking, oh, aren't you over it yet? So they don't quite understand that it takes such a long time sometimes to be able to process those emotions and be able to heal, to be able to let go and move on. So it's really key to be able to have that support network. But I also want to mention that sometimes you can turn to some friends and family, and they can actually be fueling your anger towards your ex. And you've got to be really careful of that, because it is coming from a place of wanting to protect you, because they can't stand seeing you hurt and upset and that your life's been ruined. How dare they do that to you? But it's a case of you're needing to have positive people around you that are going to help you move forward. So they're going to get you to keep looking towards the future and being able to help you heal and be able to support you in that healing process. But if you have someone that keeps saying, oh, your ex is, so-and-so, he's really horrible or she's really bad, and just keep fueling that anger, it doesn't allow you to go through that healing process. It just builds up more and more resentment about what have they done to me type of thing. So it's really important to have positive people around you who are going to lift you up. Now, I'm not saying, not saying disconnect from your family or your friends, but just make sure that the people that you are surrounding yourself with, when you're having really, really bad days, it's best to be around people who are calm, positive, and helping you through that sort of roller coaster, through that peak of grief, and get you through to the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me personally, I was feeling a lot of judgment from my family members who weren't in a step family life. Like, two of my brothers are now divorced and are remarried and in relationships with women who have had children, and they have children from their marriages. And I felt particularly judged by one of my family members who had no idea what it's like to be in a step family. And so that's the frame of reference, is that, if they, like you said, they've never experienced divorce and never experienced that kind of loss. It can definitely make the situation far, far worse for you. And you don't get out of it as quick when you have that positive support that lifts you up and helps you move out of that negativity, for sure. I couldn't agree more.
And they just sort of keep you having that self-doubt about your own judgment. So you're trying to get through something, and you're trying your very best to make it as amicable as you can, to make it as healthy and constructive as possible in a bad situation. But by sort of fueling that sort of misery and that anger, it just keeps you thinking, well, am I not doing the right thing? Because, I can remember, my parents were distraught that they were going to lose, part access to the children. And it's a natural feeling of loss for them, because our extended family also feels loss and grief when someone in the family is going through divorce, because it is going to impact them. So it's understandable that they felt, oh, you should fight to get the kids more. And yet I wanted it to be fair and be able to have the kids see their father just as much as they see me. So it was more about making sure that family or friends don't derail you off the path of being fair and making sure you're putting the kids first, because other family members might be thinking they're losing the loss of seeing the grandkids themselves. So you have to sort of have empathy and understanding of where they're coming from, but also be sure in your own mind of what you're doing is for the benefit of the whole family that's transitioning through this new phase into the new family structure. And you want to be able to do that with the least amount of conflict, the least amount of grief as you can, to be able to get to the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah. The support is so important, and perspective taking comes through that support, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Ali, it's been wonderful talking about resentment with you
Yeah.
today, from the
Thank you.
perspective of looking at families that are separating, but also ones that are starting new blended families and the challenges that they have in having resentment. So thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
And thank you for having me, Cheryl. I appreciate the invite. I appreciate sharing the knowledge and the experiences that I've had so that I can benefit other people who are going through the same thing. Yeah, thank you so much.